Four things in framing. First off, we think that children, when they are born from the ages of 0 to like either 18 or 21, depending on state laws, parents will not expose them to any religious literature, tell them about that, or other people tell them. Two, no team on the upside can argue that, well, probably they'll be exposed if they go to school or if they are with others or with their friends. The reason being, the motion explicitly says that assuming feasibility, which means that there can be no other intrusion, nobody else can show them. We assume that that part of the mechanization is already being done, so that's not going to be a problem. Thirdly, they cannot say that we are going to make the children atheists because they can, at any point in their lives, after they are no longer children, either 18 or 21, or thereafter, still choose to be at that point. Then it's fully something they want, not something that was imposed upon them. And we think that is fully realistic without any sort of interference whatsoever. The third thing that we are going to talk about is about morals, ethics, and probably pro-social behavior. They would argue that perhaps that religion is one of the best tools that teaches what these things are and the meanings that people get from them. But it's very obvious that there are even problems with the way religion teaches these things and how they are, because religion's sort of morality is fear-based and God-based sort of morality. It means you should do good things because God likes them, not because people interact with them. And at the point where people probably don't believe in, there are things that makes them question God, then makes them question those things, right? That we think it's proper that people do good things because of their sake. We think that's even a worse side in that regard. But even if they decide, they can still pick it up later on along the line. Third thing is that they would argue that parents are the ones that have autonomy over children. They can always give them what medicines they decide to choose and what's that. And that if we take this away, we take parents' rights away from children. The first one is that rights are not absolute. At a point where your rights hurt other people, states and all those things have the ability to take them away. And if you can firmly establish that there are things about these rights that are negative to the people who are the bearers of the consequence, then we can totally take them away. So that's the first thing. So for example, you can't pierce your children's ears, you can't give them tattoos. You'll be arrested because at that point you are functioning with their bodies and you are changing essentially how they are. States ban these things whatsoever. But secondly, children are basically not property that you can just take them and do anything you want, because these things affect them for a long time in their life. So we do not think this is important, that children can still, do what they want and they are not your property. Let's start first with an issue of meaning, because they are going to talk about largely benefits of what religion has and why it's good for children. The issue with this is that for most part, things like meaning, things like companionship, communal help, and all that, perhaps maybe people die and they need to contend with the fact of the afterlife, etc., are things we can still deal with regardless of religion. How does it look like? One, if children feel afraid or the fear of the afterlife, etc., parents can still talk to them. They would always be there. They would love them, etc. If they're dealing with grief or mental health issues, I think psychologists are readily available, chipping by school facilities or government, etc. They can still see them. I still think that things like school education, things them how to ask questions and make empirical answers to things that boggles their minds and what's or not, we think that that's there. But if they're looking for meaning in life, etc., I don't think religion provides a meaning for life. I think religion is a vehicle with which people attain what they think the meaning of life is, which is to say people can still get this from the work they do, the families they have, the people they relate to, etc. We do not think it's absolute in that world. Which means that any benefits that they can mention on their side, to a large extent, these benefits can be gotten through other means, community, etc. That is not dependent on religion. We think this is very possible. The first thing on the top of the speech is going to talk about autonomy and children and their existence and why this is good for them and create a better relationship with their parents. So let's start from the ability for people to choose and for people to be. I think at the point where individuals live their lives where things like religion affects their life to a long stance, and even when they do not are no longer alive, probably when they die, etc., this thing still affects them. We think the consequence of which religion you join is one that should be onus on the bearer of the afterlife, etc., which is to say it is empirically true that we really do not know which religion is the right one, which religion is the wrong one, and there are a myriad of religions and a multiplicity of them that exist. We think that individuals should take them. The problem when you inherit your parents' biases that this is the better religion and you take them, and they are not the ones that fit you, and it probably doesn't work out. We think that regret is one that parents do not bear. We think the bearer of the consequence will probably be the one that does that. Secondly, we think it's better for children and parents relationships that the children feel respected enough that that decisions that affect them to this extent are ones that are left to them, that they can fully learn things, etc., before they join. We think that's more important. But secondly, these people have not developed to an extent where we know their identity, character, and the ones that literally relate to them. Because even in religion, there are certain certain sect, etc., that they might join. For example, it's a liberal child or a conservative person. By the time they are grown, their identity should probably match with the things that they want to become. We think when these things are done, there's a respect for the autonomy of the child that is gotten in our world, that in their world is then not gotten then. The second thing we are going to argue about in today's debate is on the option of exiting religion is one that is extremely stringent, and most individuals do not leave the religion once they join. There are 5 things here. One is because from the start, it's easy to mold people into things that are believable. Because when you're a child, neuroplasticity is one that's very easy. So when they tell you that something exists, you can just believe. That is why peekaboo works for children. When you just close their eyes and tell them you've disappeared, they believe, because at that point, it's hard, it's easy to suspend logic because they do not even know what logic is, and they buy into that thing. And buying out of something they did not even believe in logic in the first place is really hard, because they tell them about mistakes, etc. That is not very easy. Second thing is that the factors that make them stay, especially when they are already in a religious environment, are still things that compel them to stay, even at the point where they want to go. So, for example, society, when you want to leave, there's segregation, the employment you have, because you have to assume already that this is a family that is already religious from the get-go, which means the society they probably live in are equally religious, which means living is something that will come with its consequences. Before I continue, POIs, closing the POI. Great. Secondly, the family and the support you get, and how you risk losing that support if you leave, the friends you associate with, and how you probably lose that when you go. But that's just external. Internally, you have to deal with a lot of things. One, your biological response, the fear that you have because of the persecution of the after. So continuing in 3, 2, 1. So the persecution that you face because of your fear of the afterlife, etc., are things that are hard. Because you don't know the unknown, what happens after you die, you are probably going to be very afraid of that. But lastly, because you have the option to leave religion, does not mean you can literally leave, because you think you're probably going to die. Because they don't even allow you to even interrogate the things that the religion have. We think that it's very, very difficult then on that regard. But the third thing is that in our world, you still can join religion at a better age. Why do you think that this is better? Because at that point you are more informed, you are more knowledgeable, and this is a more informed decision than the other side. We've already talked about the benefits and how we can still accrue these things on our end. We think this is important, but understand that religion's impact is that you can lose lifelong things that you cannot gain after those years are gone. So there are certain jobs you cannot do if you are part of a certain religion. But the problem is, to train for such jobs, you need to start as a kid. So if you are already excluded from that thing, you cannot gain them. Without religion, you can have access and train for most things, and then probably choose to do them or not do them. Secondly, the people you associate with, because they say do not be with them, religion is an essentially us versus them thing. You probably don't make certain bonds, be with certain people who probably would have added to your happiness. But thirdly, the regrets that come from following certain ideas, prejudices like anti-women belief, like homophobia, etc., are very bad. But the good thing that Henaku come and tell you is about how it makes religious proselytization better, and how the harms like homophobia, classism, etc., that's inherent in religion is one that we do away with on our side. Proud to propose.
Legal option to advance. Yeah. No, we didn't need this. We what she wasn't speaking. We wanted them to answer. And they have to find. I know it's very good.
I think if you are in the US. The first I would start is what is most important, which is choice. Because choice determines the extent to which you are a human being. The reason why you are different from a goat, the reason why you are different from an animal, is because unlike the animal, you have the ability to make choices. But those choices are only important if those choices are your own choices, because that's what determines the extent to which you are different from that of a slave. But choice is the reason why you are an autonomous being. The reason why you can then be able to determine what makes you happy and what makes you sad. That the source of your happiness, the source of your life, does not come from an external person that exists independent of you, but comes from you yourself. Choice is the reason why human beings can be able to get access to autonomy. But people deserve autonomy because individuals are independent beings. Your experiences as a person can never be replicated in any way, shape, or form by another person, because in the vast majority of the universe, there is only one you, and therefore, just because there is one you should be able to get access to choice and therefore autonomy. This is quite crucial because this proves to you why choice is fundamental to the basis of being a human in the first place, and explains to you the extent to which is the most important thing that characterizes what it means to be a human being. The question then becomes, for every single child that was raised in a religion, did they have access to choice? Because if the answer is no, then for all of those single child, it is evil that has befell them, and it is evil that you want to run away from. What you explain to you is that for children that are raised by religion, they do not have access to choice. Why this is crucial for the way in which you interrogate around. One, even if it is true that all of their benefits are true, what I explained to you is that the principle of choice in of itself supersedes all of it, because it is the fundamental of humanity in of itself, and it's the most important thing in the debate. The way in which they respond to this is that, well, choice equally exists in their side, because they say that at the end of the day, if you are raised in religion, you can subsequently leave when you grow old. But here's the problem. No, you cannot live as a person who is raised in religion. The reason why this is something that is true is for a couple of reasons. One, you yourself feel bad at the point whereby you want to live because they have indoctrinated you that you should never live. So if you are a gay and you want to opt out of religion, you cannot, because you feel that you are the antichrist, you feel that you are the agent of the devil. What that essentially means that raising people in religion internally blocks their choice from living their religion, even when that choice is something that is good for them. But then secondly, opting out of a religious homes means that you lose the structures that support you, because your parents that are going to be raising you are Christians, they are Muslims. If you decide to opt out of the religion, you lose all the structures and supports that comes with it, the food, the shelter, because they disown you, because their son has to be a Christian. We saw that in a comparative world whereby parents do not have to raise their children communally. It means that at the end of the day, they can evaluate for themselves the extent to which they are able to leave that place. But it equally means that telling the extent to which you are able to feel happy as a person at the point whereby that opt-out exists, something that's significantly less in their world as compared to how there is much more happiness that exists in our world in that regard. What this implies is that, one, it is very difficult for individuals to opt out of the religion that they are raised under. But then secondly, the comparative is our world is one that allows for these people, when they come of age, to be able to properly assess the religion that is good for them and then opt into that religion, meaning that there's access to choice. So if it is true that religion is good, it is our world that we allow for people to be able to evaluate how good the religion is and therefore opt into it. What that essentially means is that in their best case, they lose today's debate in that regard. But I'll move to the second part of my speech. They say that there is a sense of belonging. The problem is that the role literally explains to you why that sense of belonging, that community, is not something that is exclusive to religion, and you can find meaning in other ways. Multiple layers of analysis, no response as to why that is something that is not true. But it's quite crucial that people can find community elsewhere, find meaning elsewhere, find meaning in the relationships that they build with their family, find meaning with their girlfriends, find a community in other places like debates beyond the church. And all these particular places are ways in which people can have access to community. They then say that religion is then the creator of morality, and therefore morality is more accessible in their world. No, I would disagree. People can still have access to morality for a couple of reasons. First of all, is that people's personal intuition of good and evil that stems off of the back of their emotions, that I can recognize that I am causing you pain, and because I am causing you pain, it is bad, and for that reason, I can be able to determine morality and not. Secondly, it's on the principle of utility and the way in which social contracts are even built in the first place, that I know that when I engage in certain things like greed, it disadvantages certain people, and I would not want to be in that situation. All of this breakdown of morality I have explained to you independent of religion, but I'll be quite critical. Morality is actually better on our world as compared to their world, because the backbone of their morality is from an external source that is not questionable. In our world, morality has to self-justify because it does not come from an external source that is not questionable. It means that people can question the morality. Why is stealing really bad? Meaning that the extent to which we are able to adopt the morality comes from a deep understanding of the morality, and not just because God says so, meaning that morality is significantly better in our world. But I think it is quite vibrant in our big.
Yeah, making choices is fine, but then you need to have the make this particular choice successful.
Yes, that is the reason why their world is bad, because their world imposes the choice on them when they don't have the capacity to, because they are children. Ours allow them to make access to the choice when they have the capacity to, because they are now adults. So if the issue is on capacity, then capacity is more on our side, because we allow people to make the choices when they have the capacity to in that regard. Finally, I don't think morality that comes from religion is essentially something that is actually a good thing. Religion historically has been one of the biggest perpetuators of evil against women in times of like forcing. So for example, if you go to the Muslim community, forcing women to be in the kitchen, forcing women to engage in specific things that they have to consistently protest. Secondly, criticism against other groups of individuals like Zionism, like even Sharia, Shia, Sunni, Muslim, divisions that constantly discriminate against other groups of individuals. I don't think religion is the founder and is the best moral compass that exists. If anything, it's not that good of a moral compass. But I want you to think about the way in which religion will convince people in our world. Because in their world, they can just take a bunch of children that are impressionable and convince them to convert to Christians. In our world, they are not children, they are adults. So it means that they are not easily impressionable. It means that one, you have to actually prove why the religion is good, and it means that you actually have to self-justify. Why is it something that is crucial? It means that the mechanisms of taking in people into the religion is actually better because you use good means. But then secondly, it means that you have to do good things for the people to convince them to join. In their world, you don't have to convince people to join because you can easily start from when they are children, force them to be a part of the religion, and then they cannot opt out. It means that even the process of recruiting people in religion becomes significantly better in our world as compared to their world. We are proud to be OG.
Thank you. I Asian